Next up, we're talking KPIs, the numbers that tell you at a glance if your business is healthy. This session will walk you through the core metrics you should track in operations, customer experience, team performance, and profitability, and how to keep an eye on them without drowning in spreadsheets.
Hey everybody, we're here today. We're going to talk about key metrics that pros are tracking in their business to sort of monitor quality, efficiency, team performance, customer satisfaction. I'm sure the list goes on. And really, making sure that these key metrics we're tracking aren't busy work, but are actually meaningfully contributing to our business. So guys, I want to dig into that today. I guess I should introduce myself. I'm Brandon Reed. I'm on the marketing team here at House Called Pro. And would each of you introduce yourselves? Tell us your name, where you're located, what your business is, how big it is, how long you've been doing this, those sorts of things.
Steve Small. I'm the owner at Docks of Denver Cleaning and Restoration, Denver, Colorado. The company's actually been in business since 1971. I've been in the industry for about 25 years and have owned the company for about 18. We serve the entire metro area. We run about 7 or 8 trucks on a given day. We provide carpet cleaning, upholstery. We have an HVAC cleaning division. We have an area rug cleaning division in our facility. So we really try to execute on servicing just about every textile in the home or workspace. I've got a great team of about 8 individuals, and we're excited. We're kind of in a growth phase right now, so we're really looking to take advantage of some niche services and grow and just kind of maximize our space in that world.
Cool. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah.
My name's Ian. I'm with Current Solutions Electric. We're an electrical contractor out of Kansas City, and we've grown to about 7 or 8 employees. We have 5 vans out on the road, and we're kind of doing that growth thing too. I really like talking with other people doing that. We had a big push last year. We got to 1.2 million. We're hoping to get past that this year, but we might not go much past it. We kind of had a rough start, but always looking to learn more, and KPIs are definitely one of those things that we need to track to make that happen.
Yeah, maybe we'll start there. I know we're going to go deep on what you guys are looking at and paying attention to, but first, what is a KPI and why does it matter from your perspectives?
Yeah, obviously it stands for key performance indicators, and there's a number of reasons to me why there's heavy value on, the ones that we've identified that are relative to our business. But first and foremost, and this may be just how it's worked out for us, but the customer experience is at the top of that list for us. So yes, we want efficiency. We want all of the things that, promote good financial stability in the company. But for me, that, all the KPIs that relate to the way that we're being perceived and received by our customers is at the top of the list, because if we're not knocking it out of the park in that metric, really, we're playing catch up, and all the other stuff is kind of superficial. So, our margins can kind of fluctuate a little bit as long as we're, really presenting well to our customer. To me, that's first and foremost.
Cool.
Yeah, that's solid. It's super solid. I find it interesting. I'm here talking about KPIs. I just learned what KPIs were a few years ago. And for me, it can get quite complicated if I make it that way, but it's a really simple concept. The ones for me that are most important to track, customer satisfaction is a great one. And I got to say, I don't really have a great KPI system for tracking that, other than we read our reviews and we bonus on reviews, and we try and help any situation that doesn't reflect a good service. But for us, it's, it's our booking rate, it's our conversion rate, it's our average ticket, and it's our cost per acquisition. And that basically tells me, if I'm going to do 10 jobs, how many jobs do I need to have call, because I'm only going to book so many, I'm only going to close so many, and my average ticket is only going to make me so much money. That's going to tell me how much I have to spend on marketing to get those customers to call. So it can get really kind of fancy and complicated, but in the long and the short of it, it's really those basic ones for me are just like, how much do I need to spend to know how much I'm going to make? So it's kind kind of an interesting thing, and you can kind of tweak out on a lot of different KPIs, but those are the key ones that I focus on the most.
Nice. Yeah, that's sort of, I was going to ask you both, what are those non-negotiable KPIs you're paying attention to? And Ian, I think you already answered that for me, but Steve, what are yours?
Yeah, and just hearing Ian talking about some of those things, like I think some of, what I reflect on just internally is that, yeah, sometimes I'm just stuck kind of in that old mental Rolodex of like, pretty sure I know like what we need to make, what we're making, what we did last year at this time. And obviously a function of HCP is like, you can just go and look at the data and it's in black and white and you can, make a little bit more of an objective decision. A non-negotiable KPI for us would be kind of production per hour is the way that, we kind of break it down. And, I have to look at that over, maybe a month or a quarter. You can look at on a given day and get super hyped or super bummed. So for us, at least, like, got to take a little bit of a bigger picture, but production per hour is one that we kind of look at pretty heavily.
And what does it mean when you say like, I'm looking at production per hour? Can you sort of just walk us through how you're tracking that and sort of the decisions that you make based on that?
Yeah. So looking at history and trying to obviously build and become more efficient and cut and trim some fat, but a lot of it really is based around the technician or the employee's ability, or I guess buy-in to using a lot of the HCP functions. So we're trying to track travel time. They have to hit that on that way button, the start, the stop. Otherwise, a lot of that stuff's, either difficult or almost impossible to track. But certainly in the ideal day, if the job starts at 9 and they hit on my way at 8:15, you can see, okay, that's the appropriate amount of travel time. Then on the job, you've got, just say for us, maybe we're trying to hit that $150 to $200 per hour type production. So again, as long as they're willing and able to just use the functions on, their platform, it's great to track and really helps us make some decisions, either one way or the other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Ian, what about, you talked about your 4 KPIs. Can you sort of remind me what those were again and how you're monitoring those and what they're sort of helping you determine for your business?
Yeah. So for us, the foundation is, what's our booking rate? So we're getting, 10 calls a day. How many of those calls am I booking to send an electrician out to give them an estimate? Because we don't do estimates over the phone. So we have a 2-part rate there, right? So, if 10 people call, ideally I'm booking 9 of them. Mm-hmm. And when I send an electrician out to those 9 people, ideally we're converting our conversion rate, 70 to 75%. Some people do 85%. Those guys are bad to the bone. I'm really happy with 70, 75%. So, that means we're getting, 6 to 7 of those calls, which means if I spent, $100 on each of those calls, if that's 10, that's $1,000, and I got 7 of them, that's my cost per acquisition, the 7. So my average ticket comes into play. If I'm only out there selling $200 per each job, well, that's just not going to work. So my average ticket better be higher, somewhere in the $1,200, $1,300, $1,400, $1,500 range to make it affordable to acquire new customers. Because if I'm spending $200 and something to acquire a customer, and I go out and I only sell them the minimum service that we do, and they don't call back, that's an unsustainable business model. And it has taken me a minute to figure that out, because there's more than acquiring the customer that goes into running a business, right? So ideally, I want to provide many options and get that average ticket up more. Sometimes we're going to sell that $400 service. Sometimes it's going to be a $7,000 service. But if our average is somewhere in that $1,500 range, we're making money. But as soon as we start to see those KPIs slip, like the office isn't booking 9 out of 10 calls, they're booking 6. That's a chunk of money. And then when the field techs are out there and they're only closing 50%, we're throwing away half of our money right off the bat without even a chance to earn it. So it's pretty wild. And when you play that out over a week, over a month, over a year, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars for us at our size.
Yeah.
Millions of dollars for bigger companies. So they say a lot of the money can be saved and burned in a call center and in a close rate. And so we really try and focus on that. And every month we look at how they're doing compared to last month, compared to last month, last year. And we see, hey man, what's going on? Like you guys normally close what's going, and then you sit down, is this an employee, having a divorce, or they're just not happy? Maybe they're not happy with their pay anymore. Maybe you need to revisit that. Maybe, what our service, standard operating procedure is missing something. So, I mean, I could go on and on about that kind of stuff.
This is making me think, like, you both sound pretty dialed in sort of what you're paying attention to from a KPI standpoint. Talk to me about sort of the journey to get there. Like when you first started, what did it look like to say, oh, I gotta like pay attention to some of this stuff, to where you are now? And what I'm trying to get at is like some advice for folks who are more in that early stage, just starting out. What should they be paying attention to?
Yeah, for us, I still feel like I have a really, really long way to go. When I listen in on some of the seminars and things, it's clear that I got a lot to learn and a lot to get better at. But I can say for sure that when I bought my company, this company 18-ish years ago, for whatever reason, looking at the numbers, and this is going way back before HCP, we're dealing with handwritten estimates on, triplicate and all sorts of old school stuff. But in my mind, and just to help my wife, who was doing my office stuff at the time, I just said, we need to make $1,000 a day. We were running 3 trucks. And that, in my mind, if we at least brought in $1,000 a day, we'd be okay. We'd be able to pay the bills. Where I got that information and where I decided on that number, I have no idea. Today's day and age, I'd be like, we'd be out of business in a week if I thought in those terms. So, I guess for me, it's just been a very long, and, there's some things that, just feel like you can't teach an old dog new tricks. You can, it just takes a little bit longer for me. And with respect to technology and stuff, I will try my hardest. I'm just not naturally blessed with that stuff. So it takes a minute for me to for it to get through my thick skull on why some of these things are super important. But hearing other pros and listening to kind of the success stories and why it's so important, and some of the KPIs that maybe you haven't considered before that you could, it's been invaluable for us, and kind of how we've navigated the journey and slowly but surely started to act like a real company that, has the potential to scale and be something pretty substantial, hopefully sooner than later.
Yeah, because Ian, you said even earlier, I just learned sort of what a KPI was a few years ago. Walk us through some of that journey of how you got to that.
Yeah, I'm super curious about business now. When I started, I just thought I had to be a good electrician that went out and did good work, and the money would fall from the sky. But it became pretty clear when I talked to other people that actually have real businesses that there was a formula to running a business. I asked a lot of questions, and I ended up getting a coaching group, and a House Call Pro coaching group was the first coaching group I got into, and it really opened my eyes to a lot of stuff, right? So I didn't know what, I thought the profit and loss statement was just done naturally by QuickBooks. When I put the stuff in, I didn't realize that it actually had to be kind of worked by a CPA to be done correctly. I didn't know there was a way to structure it to actually make it make sense to my business, and that I could use it as a tool to kind of monitor how each month was going for my expenses and my income. And so when I kind of learned the basics of that, and then I learned that there were percentages of how my business should run. So if I'm making $100,000 a year, as a percentage, I should spend maybe 10% on marketing, maybe 25% on payroll, maybe, 18 to 20% on job costs. And then I have other fixed expenses like van payments, rent, electric, insurance, things like that. When I knew that there were benchmarks to try and hit, it made me realize that I had to price myself in a way that I had to hit those. It wasn't just price whatever you think you can get and hope you can pay your bills. So once we learned those foundations, we started to say, well, how do I get the money to do that? My insurance costs what it costs. My guys cost what they cost. The material costs what it costs. How am I going to ensure that those are at the right percentages? Well, I have to charge the right amount. So let's look at that. So we would do job costing, and then we would take the job costing and say, well, how many leads do I need to do to make good jobs happen? Well, I don't know. I need 5 jobs. Well, is that 5 jobs or is that 5 phone calls? Because what's your booking rate? Well, what's a booking rate? So they started teaching me all this stuff. And then I started visiting other people's shops. You know, I went to see my buddy's place in California. I saw how his operation ran. I saw Ishmael Valdez shop out in California. I talked with people at conferences, and lo and behold, they're all doing the same thing. They're all worried about these numbers. And so that told me, man, I better start learning what this stuff is. So that's kind of been how that goes. And I'm still learning. I'm still wanting to see other people and how they're doing it.
Yeah, because that makes me think just about like general resources available to all of us. And Ian, you talked about like the business coaching group, but also just like going and talking with your peers and fellow pros. What else comes to mind for both of you of like resources that you've either tapped into or want to tap into?
I might just take a second to double down on that. There's so much value in going and shadowing other companies in your industry, outside, you know, similar size, bigger, smaller. It's remarkable what you can learn by just, watching how other people operate and approach their skill and their craft, whether it's ride-alongs that you have to pay for, or, you know, just random connections that you meet at conventions and you buddy up with somebody and you're like, come out for a couple days and let's do this. And then I'll, you know, come out and visit you. Man, there's been some gold nuggets that have come out of that for us. And then also with respect to coaching, I think for a long time for me, having a business marketing and management degree, maybe I had a sense that I kind of knew and understood, you know, all of these things that maybe I had, you know, some understanding of, but that coaching piece, again, brought it to a different level where they noticed things that I was either being blind to or just didn't understand the relevance. And, you know, it can be, you know, an investment, but it is one of the better, or maybe perhaps one of the best investments that I've ever made, because, you know, the whatever, you know, amount you spend per month, it will come back in droves because you're able to, hit those KPIs or work toward them and implementing them. And it shaves off that expense that you're investing per month like that. And, you know, really can be a game changer and make you, you know, have the ability to scale a lot quicker than you might normally would have.
That makes me think of sort of maybe a tendency or a desire to like start tracking everything. And not to lead the witness here, but is there such a thing as like too many KPIs? Or would you say like, no, like the more the merrier?
I would say, yeah. It's, you know, it's relative to the size of your company and the bandwidth you have. Obviously, if you've got 20 people that can sit and crunch data all day and it doesn't affect your bottom line, great. You want that information. But when you're smaller, I think you have to pick the ones that are really going to affect the bottom line, move the needle, as they say. So yeah, for me as well, I have definitely fallen into the rabbit hole of, you know, trying to figure out every little piece. And then I sit and look and I'm paying a guy that only does data crunching. And I'm like, holy moly, we're not moving the needle that much. Right. So let's figure out what the most important ones are for now. And when we get bigger and we have more data, like that's great. But, you know, some of the minute details may not be as significant to me right now. You know, but I'm sure it could be helpful when you're larger.
Does any specific example of like one of those less important KPIs come to
I mean, like an important KPI might be a lifetime value of a customer. And, you know, House Call Pro does a good job of telling you that, but it's like, but why? So what is the reason that they are continuing to come back, and what services are they doing? And so you could kind of like dive into that. You can dive into like, customer avatar profiles. What are our best customers? Where do they shop? What do they see online? Like really trying to get inside the psychology of them so that you can measure how to market to that specific type of person more to get more of those customers. I mean, that could be a pretty profitable thing. And I've definitely gone down that rabbit hole where I'm like, how do I find more of Jane? Yeah. She was the best customer ever. Jane, where do you hang out at? Right. And you don't want to be weird, but you're like, Jane, like I need more of you. And like, are you at the social club, your tennis court? Like, and trying to figure out how I can specifically market to them. And I maybe someday that'll be super worthwhile. For right now, it was a little too far, I think. Yeah. So.
Yeah, nothing real, exceptional to add. You can definitely overthink it. And I think that can be perhaps just as detrimental as not being, kind of focused in on anything necessarily. So finding that happy medium, kind of being all about kind of systems and marketing and the customer kind of perception of things. Like, you can look at, you can do focus groups of what colors are, what color polo should we be wearing? All these different things that, like I said, does it really move the needle? Yeah, probably not. But at the same time, if you're showing up in bright neon colors and, getting that kind of weird reaction from a customer, you don't want that as well. It kind of depends on what you're going after. Yeah. But I think like in a service industry where we're hoping and trying to be welcomed into folks' homes, put the homeowner at ease, make sure they know we're trustworthy, we're there, to just help them solve their problem, not, do anything else. Yeah, you want to pay attention to any and every KPI that would lead to that bottom line. And obviously for you, have that sense of efficiency and productivity. And then for your employee as well, make sure they feel compensated fairly and that those metrics are adding up so that you retain that good quality employee as well.
Yeah. I'd love to hear from both of you some more specifics on sort of the like systems you have in place around tracking these KPIs. So you've both mentioned Housecall Pro. It doesn't need to be limited to that. Are you like going to certain places in the Housecall Pro platform on a regular basis? Are you like pulling spreadsheets and running your own calculations? How are you sort of approaching your KPI systems right now?
Yeah, so I use Housecall Pro reporting pretty regularly, and we extract a lot of data from that. So we extract, the number of calls we get and then the close rate on those calls. Then we track how many estimates an employee went out to and how many of those were converted. And then on a separate like Excel sheet, I figure out how much money I spent on which lead source, and then I plug in that conversion rate, the booking rate. So if, let's say I have, 5 lead sources, Google and Yelp and whatever, and on Google we're booking 90% of the calls, but on Yelp we're booking 70. And then the estimates, 70% on Google, but 60% on Yelp. And our customer acquisition cost is, $200 on, and our return on investment at the end, compared to our marketing dollars is this much on Google and this much on Yelp. Well, if it's not within that metrics that I learned, if I'm not getting 10x on my investment, it's probably not worth continuing to do that. Yeah. Or it's worth digging into why we're not closing at a higher rate with that particular lead source. It may not be the lead source. They're bringing us the calls. Maybe that particular type of customer needs to be treated a little bit differently. So that's a separate document that I got from Conquer Coaching, actually, a marketing spend analysis sheet. Mm. And I plug everything into that. And that's how I measure all those KPIs.
Yeah, that's a great example.
That's a great document, isn't it?
Yeah, dude, it's
it
gold.
Really is kind of game changing.
It's gold.
Yep. And I'll say, not super duper proud of it, but we are just now kind of entering in the world of like being pretty aggressive with marketing. The previous owner of the company, their like little badge of honor was like 90% of our customers are either repeats or referrals. And there's a lot of great, value in that. But at the same time, you're not trying to, gather more market share or anything. Like, how are people going to find out about you? But we've always kind of been a little bit stubborn about resting on our Google reviews and all just these things that are free or cheap. And yeah, that's another thing that my coaches really helped me understand is like, this is what you really need to spend. This is what you need to kind of wrap your mind around. Let's get there. Like, you don't have to do it today, but you need to get there sooner than later. And so we're just kind of entering in that world to kind of track all of those different things and see what's working, not working so well. I will say for us personally, I ran another cleaning company that was just almost identical to the one that that has been always my main bread and butter. Just this year, Q2, we absorbed that company into this company. So from an HCP perspective, it's hard to like look at numbers as we migrated over all that information in. It's been a little bit difficult to track. It's overall pretty good, but it's kind of one of my main goals for 26. Since everything will be new, everything will be absorbed into this parent company. We should be able to really kind of use a lot of the HCP reporting to gather good, valuable information.
Period.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely.
Cool. In terms of, well, maybe I'll say it this way. Like, when's the last time you sort of revised or changed what you're tracking or how you're tracking it?
Pretty much weekly.
Yeah.
I keep the core 4 and I always throw something else in there,
Yeah.
and it, depending on the season, man, like when we are in a hiring stage, I start really trying to track employee retention. Like how long are we churning through employees? Like, is there a reason for it? That's an important KPI if you're churning through people quickly. If you have a really solid retention, and which I did for quite some time, it didn't seem important to track. I had people that had been with me the whole time I had the company. I was like, I don't even have a thing. But then it happened, and they gained other accreditations and decided to go start their own thing, and that happens. So that became something like I wanted to track. And then so when we got into the hiring phase, it was like, well, when we're hiring, how many people are we interviewing to a conversion rate of hire? Am I interviewing 10 people to one hire? How many people are actually showing up? They say they're going to come, because these things actually matter when you start getting into doing enough of it. When you're just hiring one person, one guy shows up, you hire him, I guess it doesn't matter. But if you're trying to hire for a couple of positions and you put an ad out and you interview 10 people, you want to know, was your ad actually attracting the right person? Was your interview engaging? Did you sell them on your company? Do they want to work here, or is it just a job? Like, do they even know the difference between what you're offering and what someone else is offering? So I used to ask people, like, what did you love about our ad? And they would, when they would tell me, oh, I don't know, I just filled out like 20 ads on Indeed today. I'd be like, so I wonder if my ad wasn't very engaging, right? Like, I want to attract the right person. And that's easy to say, especially when you're in a hiring crunch, because you're just like, I need someone now. So those are things I'll go back and forth on tracking. Lead source can be super frustrating. It's not as easy. We were talking about this yesterday. It's not as easy as I give a lead source a phone number. The phone number calls, hey, that person saw me on Google. That person may have, talked to Jane Doe down the street, saw our van, then went to our website, then looked us up on Google. And so where do we really give the credit to? And it may not even matter, but I've definitely gone down that where I'm like, no, I need to know where they're coming from. So that's a deal. I can go on and on.
Yeah, but it sounds like sort of you have your core 4 that you're always paying attention to, and then sort of based on the needs of the business or what's happening, maybe internally or externally, that can impact, I'm going to focus on retention. Retention.
I start looking at things like, we do a training thing on Tuesday for an hour. Are we making less money on Tuesday because we're training for an hour? No, really the production goes up because now they're focused and they actually close higher. So it actually became very evident to be that the training led to more money that week. So like little things, as I'm implementing new things, hey, we put out a new, standard operating procedure. Did our close rate go down? You know, just little things that I believe every business should do, right? We want to test things. We want to see how they perform. And then we decide, is this a keeper, or is this like, maybe this is a keeper, but it's like an every 3-month thing. It doesn't have to be a weekly or a monthly. So I think that's what's fun about business to me, is that there's no like one size fits all.
Right.
There's like a blueprint, but you get to kind of pick and choose how you play the game. So.
Yeah. I guess the way that I have just kind of organically looked at it is, yep, there's definitely staples that you always want to keep looking at real continuously. I mean, the health of the company is, kind of, the cash flow is the scoreboard, as one of my, business coach used to tell me. So that's real time, that's daily, and you got to pay attention to that stuff. It does you no good to stick your head in the sand, especially if things are going bad. You need to, like we were talking about yesterday, something's bleeding, we got to fix that. And, ideally not a little Band-Aid, like figure it out and really kind of rectify and mitigate, right?
Steve, you said you heard this in coaching, and I'm trying to remember the exact phrase. You said cash flow is the...
Your bank account's your scoreboard. Your cash flow is your scoreboard. And it's like, that's pretty black and white.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, like for me, I will intentionally not look at the bank account if I don't think it's going to make me happy. But he was like, yeah, you're going to be less happy and less happy. Like if there's something that needs to be fixed, like you've got to deal with it head on. You got another piece of gold, right, that he offered in that same realm is you've got to inspect what you expect. And that has to do with, obviously your employees, but the same thing with cash flow and what's coming in and going out on a daily basis. If you kind of push it to the side or don't inspect it, like you can't expect it to get any better.
Yeah.
Well,
what would your advice be for both of you to a pro who's like, I know I should be paying attention to cash flow, but I'm not really sure where to start with that?
Start. I can honestly say that I've done a bad job of paying attention to cash flow as well. You do for us, we weren't as good at collecting money at the time of service, a year or two ago as we are today. And, you think when you're earning money and you see that, oh, I finished the job, hey, I'm owed this money. You're like, hey, I'm owed that money. I got money coming. But if you're not really paying, like you're spending money daily, and that money needs to be in the account pretty quick. So that cash flow, really, I've kind of become hip to that in the last year of like really tracking, like what is our percentage on getting paid now versus people who owe us? And we got to nip that in the butt, because my bills aren't waiting. My employees are not going to wait to get paid, and they shouldn't.
Nope.
So yeah, I think it can be very gut wrenching to look in a bank account and not see enough money to pay the bills you have coming. But it is much better to know that the day before payroll than the day of payroll. Right. So
we're going to wrap up here. I think maybe I would just love to, because I think one of my takeaways is like, just start doing this. Even if you sort of don't know where to begin with KPIs, like pick one and go with it.
Yeah.
What would that sort of first one you would say to maybe a pro early in their business, like go just start tracking this KPI? What would that one be, and why?
I would say for sure, what is your conversion rate? Out of how many estimates you go give, how many are you closing? And then you can start adding on, because maybe you don't have a booking rate. I don't know if like when someone calls for you, if you have a service that you just book over the phone and then you show up. I don't know if you're presenting in-house, depending on the industry. And especially when I was new, I wasn't booking estimates. I was like, hey, this is how much I want to come out. So, that didn't become a thing until later. But how many am I closing? How many jobs how many estimates do I have to go to close a job? And how much money do I need to make to pay my bills? And that'll tell me how many estimates I need to go to at bare minimum.
Yeah.
Right.
Especially if you're paying for marketing, right?
Oh, especially.
That is the killer. And you were talking about it earlier. If you're investing, if it's $100, but probably more in like the thousands per month and you're investing that, and then that conversion rate is substandard or whatever, that's an absolute killer. So yeah, massive when it comes to that. Staple KPI for us, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, like I was saying earlier, like I knew right away, like we need to at least make this much per van or per day. And that was bottom line. Yeah. And so I guess for me, especially if you're newer into your industry, you're trying to like gain market share, you know, first of all, don't sell yourself short. I think a lot of us have this tendency to like just take anything and everything. Like you've got to have a standard for what makes sense for you because it will turn into a bad habit. But ultimately you have to know that bottom line. What do I need to make today or for this week? Mm-hmm. And if you're a hustler, you'll figure out a way to make that happen. And, you know, I'm not going to say, you know, it would pain me to say like I would need to go door to door, but if that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do, because you've got to get that ball rolling to, you know, get to a point where, you know, you don't have to go like begging or like being so much like assertive out there. Like you've done your due diligence and it'll start, you know, whether it's a repeat customer or a referral, whatever. But I've known a bunch of people, and that's what I love about our industry, people that are literally convicted felons that have turned their life around and they just want to offer a service in their community, and they'll go shake hands and pass their business card out and it works, and they've turned their life around and, you know, are making 7, you know, 8 figures, and it's a beautiful thing. Yeah. So yeah, to me, that bottom line of what you need to do based on your responsibilities. Do you need to feed the family? Do you need to put, you know, this much away for whatever, you know, your cause is? Like you got to at least do that, know what that number is.
That's great. We'll wrap it up there. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Ian. Yeah, I feel like my takeaway is KPIs don't need to be perfect, but you got to have them. So
yes,
thanks for sharing.
Start now. Yeah, thanks for having us.
If you'd like help tracking your KPIs or setting up dashboards with the tools we covered, head into the breakouts. You can get support and compare ideas with other pros.